Hello again, whiskey friends. All right, 2022 is coming to a close here pretty soon, but just in time. Got another special release. Ooh, look at my reflection in there. This one's the Jack Daniel's Twice Barreled American Single Malt. Really excited to crack this open and explore it with you here. Thanks for joining, everybody. Let's kick off the show. Plastic off of here. This plastic's really thick. There we go. Let's do a fresh cork pop together. Yeah. All right, real cork on that one. So I'm going to pour this into a fancy glass today. This gets the fancy treatment. We'll talk about it for a little bit here, let it open up as it sits there, and then dive into the tasting. All right, do a little bit of decent pour there. All right. So for this one, with this Jack Daniel's, so this is the 2022 special release of Jack Daniel's. You know, they've been doing these for a couple years now in this bottle, dating back to the holiday edition. That would have been 2019. You know, back in 2019, when I got that holiday edition, that seemed relatively easy to get. Now it's like, I don't know if you're going to find these things or not. They fly off the shelves. You know, Jack Daniel's really raised their game over the last couple years. I think it's hard to even remember a time when you kind of look down on Jack Daniel's a little bit. If you go back down to 2017, 2018, like Jack Daniel's was just the 80 proof Jack Daniel's. No one talked about it at all. And then the single barrels, people started getting hip to the single barrels, especially the barrel strength. And then I think things really blew up with that special edition in 2020 with the barrel strength rye, followed up by that 1-2 punch of the Coy Hill. So ever since then, man, they've been doing good stuff. And it's actually hard to find the barrel strength single barrel bourbons on the shelf. So really cool to actually see some of these legacy brands raise their game just a couple years ago and to see what they've kind of become. And reputation-wise, what they've become since then. You know, Jack Daniel's has really raised their game. Maker's Mark is another one. Go back 5 years. Man, they were just the boring old Maker's Mark. And now they've got all the cast finishes and all the stave finishes and, you know, special releases coming out 1 or 2 times a year. And Old Forester kind of reinvented themselves in the middle of this, too, with that Whiskey Row series. So, you know, it's just kind of good to see what these brands have done to adapt to the current environment and to show the amazing stuff that they're sitting on when it's well aged or when it's high proof. I think that's the thing that really has been shining. Now, this particular one is a American single malt. It's a 100% malted barley in the mash bill, and from what I could learn, they've been distilling this since 2013, but this actually represents the first time that they've released it. And the barrels from this particular release all came from a 2015 batch. So I don't know if they're still sitting on older barrels or if they were still figuring themselves out, and that's why they went with the 2015. But ultimately, this goes back to 2015. Now, what makes me real excited about it, that's the twice barreled name. It sat in first fill sherry barrels for 2.5 years to get to this point in release. I mean, that's a long time. You know, I got this mash and journey pick called O Sherry that I gush over and love. And that was finished in sherry barrels for 2 years. And man, that was crazy how much that was. The sherry overcomes that. So now I got 2.5 years on a first fill barrel too. Anticipation is growing. I don't think I had anything else I wanted to touch on in this particular up front. Oh, talk about price. Should be about $70, $80. Man, I hope you're that lucky. I got this through a local whiskey friend, and my bottle here is 105.9 proof. They do range depending on the bottle you get and the batch you get. I think they go all the way up to around 107 proof is kind of the range, 105 to 107. The other interesting thing about this is it's actually a 700 milliliter bottle. So if you were to put this up against the Coy Hill, it's a little smaller. Hey, more to go around. Can't argue about that either. All right, that's enough. I can't stand it. Let's get into this thing. Cheers, whiskey friends. Thank you for joining me. Go into the nose, and then we'll break down the palate. Oh my gosh. That's a little funky. I don't know what to think of that. That's just like nothing I've had before. You know, in a lot of ways, kind of ironic, it reminds me of the Old Forester rye. It's got a banana note there, and then that 100% malt in this case, but that high malt content. The combination of those two is kind of striking me in that way. Yeah, I'm trying to get between either a banana bread, not quite banana nut bread, but banana bread. Or if I would just go into banana pudding, vanilla pudding with the wafers. Really travels between those two on initial impression. Then from there, man, the sherry influence on this thing is interesting. Almost a raspberry syrup reduction, put on top of that banana pudding with those vanilla wafers. Sounds like a pretty good idea. There's something, it keeps traveling around the fruits. A fruit that would be somewhat sour. Not quite like a pear, and not citrus. I'll have to come back to that one. That one's taking me in a interesting direction, but I think the overall flavor description I'm going to stick with the vanilla banana pudding, the vanilla wafers, the raspberry reduction on top of it. And there's a little hint of chocolate in there as well. Debating if it's milk chocolate or maybe even it lingers into like a white chocolate kind of area. Oh, you know what? Even a Hershey's Hug might be where I'm going with it. It's kind of got the white and the milk chocolate all together, and that Hershey Hug really fits that well. All right, so we got vanilla pudding, vanilla wafers, bananas, throwing in some Hershey Hugs, and then covering it in the raspberry reduction. Making up new recipes as we go here. Man, that's just the smell. Let's see what this thing tastes like. This is interesting. Gosh, I just don't know what to think of this thing. I don't know what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting this. I think I was just expecting something that traveled more along the lines of an American single malt, but this is its own thing. All right, let's go in for a taste and break it down. Cheers, whiskey friends. Okay. Very subtle. I don't mind the description of the nose. Kind of fits the palate on first impression. Overall statement. And I'm going to get one more sip. Okay, let me do one more sip before I say this. Yeah. I wish it had a bit more oomph to it. I know we've gotten spoiled by Jack Daniels and how they're able to go up a little higher, but The flavors are so good that I want the volume on them turned up just a little bit higher. But I am essentially mirroring everything I said about the nose. Up front of the palate, came across more as the banana bread I said before. Not banana nut bread, but a banana bread. That's what I was getting initially. So, it's not overly sweet. It's a dense bread kind of a feel to it. Now, everything did escalate towards mid-palate. It got a little spicier. I want to go explore that on the next sip again. But banana pudding, I was getting that hugs note. So it's mirroring what I said on the nose. Yeah, I'm gonna stick with those flavors. And then that hugs note I'm mentioning, that Hershey Hugs, which is the blend of that white chocolate and milk chocolate, does carry forward on the finish, and the banana is lingering as well with that vanilla pudding. That's a pretty good sounding dessert, though. Still doesn't taste like I would imagine it tastes like, being a American single malt. Yeah. There's some spice there. I got a little bit of nutmeg, actually, on that one towards the finish. A little bit of pepper, too. But overall, it does travel in a semi-sweet zone. The finish is long, but not a flavor punch. The biggest part of the flavor you're going to get is going to be mid-palate. So it kind of has a U shape to it in terms of the volume. Front of the palate, mid-palate, and then it lingers off at the finish. Really good, decadent dessert. Not intense, not overly flavorful, just decadent and nice and sophisticated is almost the words that come to mind. I do wish it had the oomph. But man, every sip on it, I like it a bit more. And I'm still tasting Hugs right now as I'm talking. All right, I'm going to go in one more sip, and then we'll call this tasting. Yeah, that fits through. I think I got a little more oak presence on that last sip. But otherwise, no. I think that's it. I'm going to stick with what I've said so far. Yeah, buy it. I'd buy this one again. Do I want a backup of it? I feel like that's a thing to start saying as well. I am fine with being one and done on this one. Really glad to have it. Really glad to experience it. This isn't something I will chase again now that I've experienced it the first time. But it does make me interested to see what Jack Daniel's does with this mash bill going forward, if it's sherry finished or not. I really think I dig what's happening underneath all this. I do wish it was a little bit of a higher proof, had a bit more punch to it, but that's my only knock. So, yeah, we'll leave it at that. Jack Daniel's, twice barreled. Pretty good. Pretty good. All right. Well, thank you for joining me on this tasting, whiskey friends. I'll catch everybody later. Bye, everyone.